Greetings, everyone. Hope all of you are having an absolutely fantastic day. I'm so happy to bring you another episode of The Silent Minority. I am your host, Maury. With me, as always, is Hudson. Say hello to the people, Hudson.
Man, I got to say, as soon as you started talking, that kid upstairs started going crazy and knocking around up there. And I'm like, man, as soon as you started talking. So, I'm going to have to do some work on editing. How y'all doing?
Hope all of you are doing absolutely fantastic. We've got a great show lined up for you today. So in our Black Twitter segment, we're going to talk about Dr. Dre and Marjorie Greene, the Republican out of Georgia, who for some reason decided that she could use Dr. Dre's music without his permission. Then in our Global Meltdown section, we're going to talk about skyrocketing egg prices. It seems that egg prices have risen by almost as much as 60%. We're going to talk about why and what it means for the country. Then we're going to get into a conversation about Lamar Jackson, who is still refusing to play for the Baltimore Ravens. How should this be interpreted? What does it mean? And what is our reflections on the whole situation? And then finally, for our Chicago news, Lightfoot's campaign sends out a message to teachers asking them to have students work on our campaign in exchange for school credit. Insanity. We're definitely going to get into this. And luckily, Lightfoot has already responded to the situation. So we're going to talk about her response as well. But circling back to the top, we start, of course, with what's going on in Black Twitter. And this one is a doozy. So Marjorie, what is this chick's full name? I barely even think about Marjorie Taylor Greene. Yeah, a Republican representative out of Georgia put out a campaign video once Kevin McCarthy finally was able to win his speaker position. And in that video, they used music from Still DRE, which of course is a very, very famous song from Dr. Dre. But unfortunately, they didn't ask Dr. Dre for permission to use it. And his lawyer put out a cease and desist. Not only that, Dr. Dre sent a message to TMZ, making it very clear he does not allow politicians to use his music. And even if he did, he would not allow a politician, quote, as hateful and no, what's the exact
divisive?
Right. Hateful and divisive politician as her to be someone who we would allow to use his music. So yeah, he has no interest in it whatsoever. And the funny thing to me about it is, as soon as this occurred, Marjorie came out publicly and disrespected his music. Said something about it being woman hating. You know, the usual thing old white folks say about hip hop. But it was just fine when you wanted to use it for your campaign video, right? Give me a break. Hudson, what are your thoughts?
You know, many would say that Dre made his first early living with some hateful and divisive music. I was just listening to Dre Day, earlier this afternoon before we recorded. So it's funny. Wow. I just listened to that, and then you got Dr. Dre who has to tell you, not only do I not let politicians use my music, I especially don't let your political ass use my music. Not you, not ever. Absolutely. So I thought that was incredibly, I thought it was a great move. Mm-hmm. I thought it let us know kind of his stance on her and probably the Republican Party in general, especially in the direction that party's moving without him explicitly even saying it. But I think it's crazy how Republicans just kind of be in this mode of I can just take and do whatever I want. Mm-hmm. I mean, not that Democrats I found are much better, but they're much more subtle with theirs. And the thing about Democrats is, they still, for better or worse, is the party of the more common people. So it's kind of more acceptable when they kind of do some things, they're a little bit more humble with it. But Republicans just take your stuff and then talk about you when you get mad about it. That's exactly what she did.
And I think part of the reason they're so used to be able to just take stuff is they're used to people fighting back the way Democrats fight back. They might whine and complain about it, but Democrats very, very rarely actually use their power against Republicans, like bond together and say, no, 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 we're going to do what we have to do to put a stop to this. So to mess with somebody like Dr. Dre, who is no problem whatsoever, shifted his weight around like, whoa, 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 let me make it clear to you why this is not going to happen. She's punching above her weight. She shouldn't have done this. She shouldn't have done this.
Well, in listening to Dre Day and kind of searching for some other music that they had, I realized that, not just here, but and it's slightly off topic, but because Snoop Dogg has Death Row Records now, and so a lot of the music that Dre did is tied up in there, right? And there's some major platforms that Snoop and that company does not allow this music to come out to. So they've been especially watchful on all the music that is on those particular albums and things of that sort, because Snoop is doing this whole NFT thing with a lot of that Death Row music. Who knows if it's gonna pan out, but he's doing it either way. That means it's kind of limited on where you can find some of this music. So they've had a watchful eye. So the arrogance to just go in and just try to take this music and use it and think that no one's watching, is absolutely crazy. How many people probably shot a message to one of Dre's social media platforms and said, hey, guess who? I guess you a part of the Republican Party now. So, it's like how many millions probably told on her for even using this, right? But it's absolutely nuts because she's not the only one that's been in hot water for using other people's stuff, right? I mean, Trump was big on using other people's music and just throwing it in there. And Trump was having trouble. Wasn't he having trouble finding musicians to play at his inauguration and various other events, right? So he just said, I'm just going to take your music on at certain events, on certain platforms, and just use it. He's gotten tons of cease and desist orders on him, and I guess she decides she's just going to follow suit.
Yeah, but the thing is, you got to have enough bank to be able to handle that, or at least have the illusion of a big bank to handle that, where they're going to decide, okay, I'm not going to bother getting a lawsuit with you because I know you have the money to continue this on for years. She don't have that kind of cash flow. She doesn't have that kind of backing. So for her to decide she's going to do this the Trump way, I don't know what she's thinking, but I'll be glad to see her do it because it's not going to work out. It's not going to work out well for you. Your personal life is going to be in shambles, girl.
She's definitely got the feeling of entitlement. She's definitely got that. That's about the thing that she's got that just makes her go completely over the edge here and do these sorts of things. And I mean, I guess people kind of wonder, and especially I've noticed that people on that side of the aisle kind of all of a sudden when it comes to someone else's rights on something that they don't feel is that important, all of a sudden they just don't understand rights, right? Gun rights, boy, they love to understand that, right? The right to tell a woman not to have an abortion. They seem to love, they love that right? They love to talk about rights. And then they just seem that like it's no big deal to take someone else's music. I mean, all of a sudden it becomes about how much money they have. Dre has enough money. Dr. Dre has enough money. What's he worried about? What's he worried about that for? Or what's he worried about this for? And it's funny how their whole demeanor and attitude just completely shifts with regards to rights and what someone has a right to and what they don't. It just totally shifts.
I absolutely agree. I agree. And it'll be interesting to see if these kind of situations come up more often with her in the future. Now for our global meltdown news. Egg prices have skyrocketed almost 60%, which is creating a pretty massive impact on American households. Now, to understand this, you have to understand that in the last few years, egg consumption has risen sharply in the country because Americans in general, they're eating a lot less beef, a lot less venison, a lot less, things that they might consider to be unhealthy. So a lot of people are eating a lot more eggs. In fact, at this CBS News article that I'm looking at about it, the Los Angeles Times reporter says each of us eats about as many eggs as one hen can lay per year, which is insane when you think about it. Now, the unfortunate part in this last year is that this rise in demand has been coupled with production going down significantly due to an avian flu epidemic. So this is basically, it's like coronavirus for birds. That's basically the way you can think of it, where it's this disease that birds get and they can easily give it to other birds, except that you can't just try to siphon off birds from each other. Essentially, what they've had to do is when a bird picks this up, they've had to put it down, for the good of the other birds around it. And because of this, nearly 58 million birds have been infected with the avian flu as of January 6th. And the USDA said it makes it the deadliest outbreak in U.S. history. And because these birds must be killed once they're infected, egg supplies are falling, and it's causing the prices to rise significantly. And again, an increase of 60% is going to be a major impact on any household that buys a lot of eggs. In fact, a dozen large grade A eggs were $4.25 in December, which is not the way it's supposed to be at all. Hudson, what are your thoughts?
I mean, where's the bird vaccines? Where they go get some vaccines for these birds, put in the chicken feed, and send it out to all these farms? I mean, just as important as getting us vaccines, we got to get our food supply some vaccines as well, and make sure that they're all good. I mean, like you said, one hen, it pretty much lays enough eggs for one person. So each person here, we need a hen for them. and there's no way that this can just affect eggs, right? Eggs goes in a lot of different stuff. So I've been noticing climbs in, if you got a sweet tooth like myself, I've been noticing a lot of stark increases in things like enema products, cakes, cookies, donuts. So I got a sweet tooth, y'all. I do. And I noticed those prices have went up drastically. But here's the thing. Those prices should not have gone up that high because you're missing some eggs. I mean, we're talking about a sharp increase. Like, these things are going up higher than the eggs themselves went, and that makes no sense to me. So I think retailers or manufacturers are taking advantage. Somewhere, middlemen are taking advantage of this, and they are drastically increasing the prices of other items that don't need such a drastic increase. And here's my problem with all of this. When you raise those prices, it's a little bit different because, it sort of goes more toward the commodity range, right? But when you look at some of those other items that it affects, how far down would those other prices really go? Because you find in a lot of items, once those prices go up, they just stay there. They just don't go up again for a while, but you stay paying that big, hefty price on a lot of other stuff that you did before. But I say we need some vaccines. We need to give these birds some shots, put in their bird feed. We need to do something, protect our chickens.
So I think this whole situation just forces us to confront the stark reality that, once again, because we were already confronted with this over the past few years, but we're just not built well to handle viruses. Like that is a real weakness in our country. And it seems to be that way, not only for humans, but for animals as well. And you can point to a bunch of different reasons that this is not really about like anti vaxxers or anything like that, because they were not the only ones that were the reasons why our response to dealing with COVID was so poor. It's not their fault that the government did not subsidize any of these businesses that have shut down. And so I just feel like I would really like to see our government pivot and decide that there needs to be an influx of resources to the USDA, the CDC, these organizations that are supposed to be responsible for ensuring we're able to address these types of outbreaks as quickly and as effectively as possible. Because thus far, I just haven't been impressed by what I've seen from them. Now, from this situation, I'm not sure if I I think I think the way that the USDA has handled this is certainly more impressive than what we see regarding COVID, because what they've talked about is, and of course this is only coming from their perspective, but basically they're saying it could have been significantly worse, but a lot of measures have been put into place to specifically replace the hens that are responsible for egg laying. So even though you seeing an outbreak of 58 million birds, actual production of the eggs has only dropped 5%, because they've been trying to switch them out and keep things going as well as they possibly can. So I definitely see where some mitigation efforts have been put into place, and I'm happy that at least something was done to try to release some of the pressure. But I think it's pretty apparent that we're just not built well to handle these types of incidents, where it seems like other countries handle it much better.
Well, we're not. Well, we're not friendly towards our environment, and in general, what's one of the things that causes disease, right? Overcrowding, and and the conditions with which we're overcrowded in. You know, um, look at New York City and look how crowded that area is. Look at Chicago. Look how crowded that area is. The more crowded it is, the more dirty and filthy it is, and which is a horrible place to try to breed animals that we want to eat, or eat their eggs, so to speak, their offspring, so to speak. So what do they do with these chickens? They're not roaming free out there in the range with all this land and and all of that. They're cooped up all together in their own feces, in their own whatever. And I'm sure people come along and they try their best to make the circumstances a little better. But in a lot of these huge farms where we get the majority of our stuff, I'm not talking about this small, Mary and John own a farm here. They got about 20 chickens and all of that. I'm sure they do fine when it comes to making sure their hens roam around and get exercise, and make sure they're not just slipping around in their own poop. Because animals in the wild, regardless of what people think, most animals in the wild does not go around just slopping around in their own feces. They don't. They pick a spot, just like we do as humans. They use it there, and they get away from that spot, right? So it's not what a lot of people think. And so when you look at these huge places like Tyson or whoever, they're not doing what Johnny and Mary do on their farm with 20 chickens when they got 1 million chickens roaming around in a couple different spots. They're overcrowding them. They're fat and lazy, these chickens, because, hey, we want big old fat leg chickens with these big old thighs and these big old breasts, right? Half of the chickens ain't real to begin with, got grown in a test tube. Who does that? Now, I don't know. So, of course, in these types of conditions, these are not friendly conditions to ward off disease. So these diseases are going to come. So I would suspect that they are, because avian flu isn't new, right? Bird flus, they aren't new. Right. So I would suspect that they have come up with measures to try to limit the damage. But this time around, it sure didn't limit the damage to any of our pockets. And what I find are these companies, and especially the middlemen that are involved with these companies, they play it too safe on the prices for them. for their bottom line. They play it too safe for themselves, even with supposed government regulation on certain products. They play it too safe for themselves, and it hits our bottom line pockets. And like I say, those prices don't go all the way back down. Those prices never fairly go back down to where they could go, right? They never do. They go up and they stay at a certain point and level off, and until they're ready to increase again. And I think that sucks for us because, like I said, it's not just eggs, right? So a lot of things that eggs go into that are now affected by this.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think the real thing to monitor regarding this is, when are we going to get to the other side? Because right now the USDA is saying that the avian flu is not by any stretch of the imagination over. So it's very possible that things could get worse, that these shortages could increase, that the prices could go up even higher, and that things could be even more affected. So hopefully we're quickly approaching the end of this, but it's really not clear right now.
You know who I feel sorry for? People who go to the gym. You know, because they are big people. They are people who love their eggs.
Yep.
Eggs is a great source of protein. Back in the 80s and all that, they kept going back and forth on if eggs were good or if eggs were bad, right? We have finally pretty much made the decision that eggs are good. And realistically, one of the big reasons we moved away from beef and moved away from venison was cost. Because for a fraction of the price that you can get for beef, you could eat 2 eggs and you were just fine. You got more than enough protein. People have learned that you don't need as much protein as you used to think you needed. That was one, right? People used to overload themselves with protein and it was just getting lost, right? So now people understand more about protein, and they understand that a couple of eggs a day is perfectly fine for your protein intake. And now that people realize that, it was a much more cheaper alternative. And at this point, it still is, even with the way the prices have went. But like you said, there's no end in sight right now. And the avian flu will never go away, because flus don't go away. They just get a makeover each year. And they come back. You know, sometimes they come back stronger, sometimes they come back weaker. That's what a flu does.
But they're always back.
Yeah, they're always back. So hopefully, maybe each time, I hope they've learned some new techniques and new things that will help them through it the next time. But this time, it sure didn't help our pockets, I'll tell you that.
Not at all. Not at all. Something definitely to continue monitoring and looking at. All right, and next up for our freestyle section, let's talk about Lamar Jackson, who is still refusing to play for the Baltimore Ravens. Now, for those of you who are not familiar with the situation, Lamar Jackson is an MVP caliber player, so he's definitely considered one of the superstars in the league. And at the exact same time, for whatever reason, the Baltimore Ravens have decided, thus far at least, not to sign him to a long-term contract, even though he's made it very clear that's exactly what he wants. Earlier in this season, he injured his knee and pretty much has not come back since. And there's been a lot of speculation that he would be back on the field if he actually had a long-term contract and felt like the Baltimore Ravens were confident in him. Hudson, what are your thoughts?
I think Baltimore Ravens always seemed like one of those teams that balked at investing in the offense, right? They were always sort of those more defensive-minded teams, right? And it's kind of shocking, because when you have a quarterback like Lamar Jackson, right, you can really kind of get away with a lot of different things. So we see it here in Chicago with Justin Fields. Your offensive line doesn't have to be as good when you got a Justin Fields, right? Your receivers don't have to be as good when you got Justin Fields, right? Heck, even Mitch Trubisky, who was a running quarterback, in 2018, he showed he hid a lot of bad things within our offense just by him being able to run the ball. Same thing Justin Fields has done, right? And Lamar Jackson, has done those same things. So it is surprising to me because it's kind of a bargain when you pay a guy like Lamar Jackson, because you can kind of soft pedal a few other things. So it really is kind of surprising. Now, one of the things that's come up is that he got hurt at the end of last season, and now he's gotten hurt again, right? So maybe that's making them pause. I don't know. But I will say I don't like the whole system of waiting to the very last minute to decide, if we're going to sign a guy or if we're not, and what we're going to do. It really doesn't make any sense to me. And I think a lot of football players are wising up to it, that these rookie deals are it's a trap. It's a trap. And so, after a couple of seasons, these guys are starting to say, "Hey, I want my money. Where's my money?" It's the same thing that Roquan Smith did here. Hey, where's my money? Where's my money? Let's ink a deal. You see what kind of player I am. So let's talk turkey here. And it's no surprise also that Lamar Jackson, he represents himself. So just like Roquan Smith did, and I think that bothers a lot of teams and a lot of owners and GMs as well. I think they don't like the idea of players managing themselves. And so, all the way around, this turned into a bad situation. And I think Lamar Jackson's, my personal thing, I think Lamar Jackson is totally doing the right thing. And I would say, if the Ravens thought they had any future going forward with Lamar Jackson, it would be the right thing for the Ravens as well.
Right. So the way this situation is played out is kind of crazy to me. First of all, obviously being in Chicago, being a Bears fan, I didn't feel like we should have let go of Roquan Smith. I felt like we should have just paid the man. I felt like we should have just paid the man and let him be the cornerstone of the defense for the next few years until we became a championship caliber team again, because it's not like linebackers like him are a dime a dozen. They're not. The linebackers who are able to do what he's able to do are rare, and he actually does put butts in the seats. So why just let him walk? But whatever. All that being said, I don't feel like the Baltimore Ravens should have paid him all this money, at least not before they paid Lamar Jackson. I think that's a terrible look for them.
That goes back to what I said. Sorry to interrupt. That goes back to what I said. They concentrate more on the defense. They tend to leave the offense out there holding the bag.
I absolutely agree. And this is what I'm getting to. I feel like it's almost like we're looking at a GM and a team philosophy that can't adapt to the pieces that they have. And that's terrible. All right. Your philosophy is supposed to adapt to what's on the field, to the pieces that you have available. If you're playing chess and you had a strategy that involved your queen and then you lost your queen, you have to adapt your strategy to the pieces you have available. You have an MVP caliber quarterback. Your defense does not hold up on the same level at all. And paying Roquan Smith this money did not change that. The fact that you can't pivot and say, all right, clearly we need to build around our quarterback is ridiculous. You can go on any of these platforms and see a whole list of people saying, why wouldn't they put that energy and effort and money into getting a number one receiver for your quarterback so that he's running less, getting hit less, and getting injured less? Why would you get a middle linebacker instead? It makes zero sense. And I've heard the response of people that, well, they try to get a number one receiver, but, a lot of these receivers, they don't want to have to block for him. They don't want to have to play in the system. And so it's more difficult to get them to Baltimore Ravens. I don't believe that for a second.
That. No,
I don't believe that for a single second. It's lit on the field when Lamar Jackson is on there. And as a wide receiver, to be someone who can take advantage of those busted coverages and get the kind of public attention that comes from being in Lamar Jackson's orbit, I'm sorry. If the Ravens wanted him to have a number one receiver, he would have one. So this is indicative of an organization. I absolutely agree with you, Hudson. They're really about the defense. They want to go back to the good old days where all the money was in the defense, and then you have folks like Joe Flacco on the offense, and you just give him, his little amount, and he'd be good. And that's just not the kind of team you have, and you're trying to force it. Why? Why, when you have an MVP caliber quarterback?
Traditionally, you pay defensive stars less than you pay offensive stars, especially in today's league. So traditionally, they get away with paying less to try to field the team that way. But again, it speaks to me of then when you have a guy like Lamar Jackson who can cover up multiple holes within your offense, why wouldn't you pay the man? And then I go back again because I said it, but I kind of glossed over it when I said it. He represents himself. Mm-hmm. And I think what a lot of GMs have trouble with and hate about it is that there's no leverage there. There's no leverage with him. He doesn't have other clients. He doesn't have to worry about being disrespectful or being, just more to the point of, you want other teams to want you. But you don't have to worry about, hey, I got to look this GM in the face and talk about this other client after I just cussed him out about Lamar Jackson. Right. Lamar Jackson don't have to worry about that. He's representing him and only him. Yep. So he can go all out for him. And I think a lot of GMs, I think they secretly probably hold unofficial meetings on things like this where we're really going to give these kind of guys a hard time. No matter how good they are, we're going to give them a hard time because you saw the hard time he got. Roquan Smith got in Chicago, just couldn't ink nothing, whether it was pace. And Poles understandably wanted to get his evaluation. I do believe with Poles it was bad timing, because why would Poles hand somebody $100 million? And in fact, I heard that they did offer $100 million, but I think Roquan wanted, and rightfully so, Roquan wanted more from the Bears than he would want from a new team. Yep. You would expect a new team, but
I've been the pillar here. I've proven that you should pay me. You're going to pay me as someone who has proven himself in your organization. And I absolutely agree. When it comes to Lamar representing himself, it's not just that they have no leverage, it's that he's not part of the good old boys club.
Yeah.
These agents are just as much a part of the system as the GMs and everybody else is. Like, these agents are known. They go to those same golf courses. They're all getting together. Like, they all have relationships with each other. So a lot of times when these deals come up, even though there might be a lot of back and forth and trying to hammer out deals, at the end of the day, these people all know each other. And so they know they can come to an agreement that's going to work for everybody. Whereas when Lamar Jackson steps into that room, he's not looking for an agreement that works for everybody. I'm looking for an agreement that works for me, and me only. And how me fighting for myself impacts my relationship with you is really irrelevant to me. And honestly, that's the way it should be for your representation. Like, your representation shouldn't be considering any other clients when they're representing you. But I absolutely agree with you that is exactly what happens. They have to negotiate these deals in a certain way because there's an understanding, hey, right now I'm in the room for this MVP caliber talent, but next month I'm going to be in the room for a guy that you could give the minimum, but maybe I can get you to bump it up a little bit if I'm more if I convince my MVP guy to be accepting of some specific terms that you have.
Exactly.
So nah. I think Lamar Jackson's doing exactly the right thing. And frankly, I think he's laying out a blueprint for other people, of this caliber to be able to say, you know what, why do I need another person in that room? Why do I need another person in that room? I can walk into that room and tell these people, this is what I want. And I know you have it. And I know I deserve it. So either I'm going to get it here or I'm going to get it someplace else. And even more to the point, I absolutely agree with him holding out. What is the point of walking out there and getting injured? The Baltimore Ravens, if you get injured, they're not going to pay you. If you play poorly, they're going to claim that you're not worth the money. There is no upside. No upside for it.
They're on a 3-game losing streak right now, the Ravens. right? And understandably, that's without Lamar Jackson on the field. But even still, that just goes to show that the other pieces in place on this team aren't up to par to win.
If you can't win without me, you have to pay me. Period.
Yeah, exactly. There's that. And to me, it also proves that they haven't put enough around him to build a Super Bowl contending team. So if they had, they would have been able to at least pull out one or two of those games, but they didn't. Right? And so you're going to try to want him to go back in against a tough Cincinnati team and try to, you're not even going to make it past Cincinnati. No. Yeah, so why are you going to put him at risk? He's 26 years old right now. And arguably, he's going to go into these next 5 years, which I'm sure he's looking for at least a 5-year minimum contract at this point. But these are going to be the golden years, typically, of a quarterback's career.
Right.
And you want to give it up right now? You're thinking about franchise tagging them? What are you really thinking about doing? Right. So, I want to bring up Damar Hamlin, though, because this is all on the heels of Damar Hamlin. Right. And when Skip Bayless made that awful tweet about they should play the game, right? Even though this man literally died on the field, but they should just scoop him off to the side, and everybody should continue to play. Most insensitive thing this man has ever said that I could think of. He said a lot of insensitive things, but that one to me took the cake. But, surprisingly, he's kind of on Lamar's side in his tweak about this, because his thought is that Lamar's is sitting out because he hasn't been paid. And in Skip's opinion, he rightfully should. He should sit out because he hasn't been paid. They should pay this man, is basically what he said. And I think to myself, you look at Tua over there in Miami, right? Tua over in Miami, who laid it all out there, right? I think one commentator said Tua played half the season leaking from the side of his brain.
I mean, that's actually not that crazy to say, to be honest with you.
And look what happened. Now they're going into the playoffs without him. Right. And so what did it get them by forcing him, or him forcing himself, or the combination of the two getting him out on that field? It's done nothing. Right. It's only hurt him worse. And you look at Justin Fields. Right. Look back at Damar Hamlin, who was on his rookie contract. Justin Fields on his rookie. Lamar Jackson on his rookie contract. They're putting their bodies heavily on the line out there.
Yep.
Right. And we expect them to go out there and play football because it's the playoffs. Right. He has to think about the rest of his career. He has to think about the rest of his life. He has already had to sit out part of last season. Now he's had to sit out this season for the injury, and you want him to risk him never being the same again, or coming anywhere close again to doing what he's been able to do on the field. And that hurts the entire NFL. Let's take it away from Lamar Jackson. Shouldn't we as fans, and shouldn't the NFL want the best possible product on the field? Isn't that what we want? Don't we want the Lamar Jacksons out there lighting up the scoreboard? Why have they put all these safeguards in place as far as penalties for roughing the quarterback, roughing the passer, and this and that? Why have they done that and went to these extents if we did not want folks like Lamar Jackson, folks like Justin Fields lighting up these scoreboards, folks like Damar Hamlin laying it all on the line, trying to get out of that rookie contract? I mean, so why would we want to throw them at risk and put them out there where they could possibly hurt themselves for life and never be the same going back out on that field if they get to play again after that? Why would we want to do that?
It doesn't make much sense to me. And it's just, it's kind of wild to me that what's readily apparent is the Baltimore Ravens have been very cheap with what they've put on the offense around Lamar Jackson, right? They've been saving all this money, and now they refuse to pay this man. But they want him back out on that field for the playoffs because of all the money that they potentially get from having him out there. And I'm sure from Lamar Jackson's standpoint, he's basically saying y'all can go to hell. And honestly, I don't think he's hurt. I absolutely believe that if he had a full contract, his ass would be back out there on the field and he'd be lighting it up and it'd be no problem. He's staying out because he feels disrespected. And honestly, also because he knows I have no future here. That to me is what the clear message is being sent, because you're refusing to pay me and you've just given a defensive player a $100 million contract. I assume you're about to trade me. So why am I going to put it all out on the line for y'all when I know y'all are not going to pay me? And to me, this is the unfortunate thing. I think we've talked before about that American culture where we kind of worship the business owner and we worship the guy at the top. And it causes us to kind of ignore the everything else that's going on, because the Baltimore Ravens are able to try to portray this situation as, well, he's being disrespectful to the team. He's failing his team. If he really cared about those other players, he'd be out there going to war with the soldiers that have been out there for him all this year. And the fans will eat that up. Instead of the like people like Skip Bayless, Shannon Sharp, Stephen A. Smith, people who understand the business and look at the entire situation, they'll present this situation in a more balanced way. And I think the vast majority of the broadcasters who have spoken on this pretty much side with Lamar Jackson. But at the bottom level, the fan level, they're always siding with the team and the owner. Like, you should play. Just worry about your contract later, or just abide by the contract that you have. Don't worry about what's going to come next. Just do the right thing. It's always the responsibility of the player, especially the black player, to do the right thing for the team. It's never the responsibility of the owner to do the right thing for the player. And I definitely agree that I'm happy to see more NFL players using their power. But the problem is, when are we going to see more NFL players using their power collectively? That's what we're still not seeing. We're seeing people like Lamar Jackson and others who are basically able to bully their ways into contracts, bully their way into situations that they want to be in. We have not seen the players themselves all come together and say, you have to provide us insurance. From the first day we step on the field, you have to provide us insurance. Those overall salary caps have to go up, because all of us should be getting paid. You have more money. You are making money hand over fist. You are making more money than baseball is, and yet baseball players are getting paid 5, 6, 7, 8 times more than us. That doesn't make any sense.
Well, I got to say, this whole, as I said before, this rookie contract is a whole scam. And, I almost say that in the next round of negotiations, I hope that they have some leverage to take that rookie contract down to 2 years. I just don't think a team needs more than 2 years to figure out if they like this player, if they want to keep them. And I don't think they should be able to up to 5 years, in fact, because they can exercise that 5th year option, right? I just don't think that teams should be able to monopolize a player for up to 5 years. Right. Look what happened again. And I throw Mitch Trubisky out there. Look what happened to him. I mean, virtually it looked like a waste of 4 years with him being here in Chicago. And a lot of those years with a head coach who didn't like him. And yet he was just tied to here, had to pretend like he loved being here. When in fact, I'm sure it was one of the most miserable experiences he's ever had as a football player. I'm sure
miserable
it was.
For us too, because we never really liked him either.
Right. And to me, maybe we just, and it proved we definitely weren't the right fit for him. Someone else could have been. Right. And if he's able to pull out after 2 years, maybe he can find another team that can groom him into what he wanted to be, right? But now look what happened. We cannot let I just don't think we can let teams monopolize a player for up to 5 years anymore, because they're just, we see these contract negotiations. We see how they're just playing, even with people who are obviously MVP caliber type players. So it's not just the players who are questionable. It's not the ones who are far down on the bench, third string, special teams. It's not just them. They're doing this with people like Roquan Smith, people like Lamar Jackson. And to me, it's got to stop.
Yeah. Yeah, I absolutely agree. I love to see what Lamar Jackson is doing, and it'll be interesting to see where he ends up going next year, because I don't think he's going to be a Baltimore Raven for much longer, to be honest with you.
I don't think so either.
So, moving on to some Chicago Grapevine news. Man, Lightfoot at it again. The self inflicted wounds seem to just never stop. But this one definitely got the attention of all the people that are campaigning against her. Mayor Lori Lightfoot's reelection campaign sent an email to Chicago public school teachers Wednesday. And in this email, it asked them to encourage their students to volunteer to help Lightfoot win her second term as mayor in exchange for class credit. Now, this email was sent by Megan Crane, who's the deputy campaign manager for Lightfoot. And the email says participants in the externship program would be expected to contribute 12 hours per week to the Lightfoot campaign, and students could earn class credit. Now, the blowback was pretty immediate against their campaign, with people making it very clear that they felt like it was inappropriate and an abuse of her power, to the point that Lori Lightfoot actually came out with a statement. And I think she actually had a whole conference. Yeah, she had a press conference about this, where she made it clear that a mistake was made. Hudson, what are your thoughts?
I think I don't think I think the only mistake, it's very clear it was a mistake, but I think the mistake is that they got caught. I think the mistake is they didn't remember that the Chicago Teachers Union endorses someone else for mayor. And so, when you send this out, you had to know that someone was going to cause an uproar on this. So I don't know what they were thinking, but no, I don't think. I think they tried to slip one past and hope that nobody would say anything, and there you go. I think they're hoping that some teachers may have inadvertently told some students, and they might get some help in there, and whether these students get class credit later on or not, I think they were hoping to sneak something in here. But for them to be able to just casually do this and have virtually no repercussions, except for possibly getting voted out come February or even April, depending on, going to a runoff. This is crazy to me. What punishment is going to come down for this? Because someone should get fired, in my opinion.
So we've talked about Lightfoot many times before. And I made it clear, I voted for her. I had a lot of hopes for her. I've been very, very disappointed. I'm definitely not going to be voting for her in February. And I've been disappointed with the level of empathy and care that she's had towards the Black community. I don't feel like we got 4 years of a mayor who I felt like was a Black woman and representing as a Black woman from the community. And so I've been very disappointed with that. But the thing that disappointed me the most about Lightfoot is I think she has horrible political instincts. I mean, it's just incredibly poor political instincts, to the point that she'll be given things that, in my mind, this is a layup. Like when the police barged into that woman's house and made her stand naked and for while they searched around her home, and of course it all ended up to be a mistake, and they just treated her with no respect. To me, that's a layup for Lightfoot. That's a layup to stand over there and say, this is unacceptable. We will make sure that this woman is taken care of, and we will demand more from our officers, et cetera, et cetera. And somehow she completely fumbled that whole situation, to the point that now it's a black eye on her record.
Yeah.
And
Police didn't like her anyway. So
exactly.
Exactly.
For anybody
now no
asking,
one likes her for it.
For anybody asking, well, wouldn't she want to be careful about that because she wouldn't want to piss off police? Police and her were on opposite sides from the very beginning. Like, there's no danger of that. So you got to ride with the folks who got you where you are. And this to me is yet another example of an unforced critical error. And I say it's an error on her part because, yes, the email was sent by her deputy campaign manager. And yes, any politician can have staff that makes a mistake, does an error, or something of that sort, right? But Lightfoot was very, very careful not to throw Crane under the bus.
Mm-hmm.
And as far as I know, she has not been fired, which to me is a clear indication you were involved in the decision-making process.
Mm-hmm.
You were involved in the decision-making process, and now you are trying to save face. This is an unforced error. This is a blunder. Anybody could see that this email, and honestly, I don't think it matters who CPS endorsed. Even if the teachers union had endorsed her, this would still be a terrible email. And there would still be no way you could send this email out without other people finding out, especially your competition. There is no way in hell it's okay for a candidate to send emails to teachers throughout the city saying, hey, your kids can come work on my campaign in exchange for school credit. There's no way people are going to look at it and be like, oh, yeah, that sounds ethical. That sounds like something I'm okay with. Absolutely. What are you thinking? What are you thinking?
Just to be clear for people who might not understand what exactly is wrong with this, is that as mayor, and we have aldermen who are in this race. We have various people in this race. They're not supposed to use city resources in your campaign. You're not supposed to use this. It's unethical. It's illegal. You're not supposed to do it. So by using her resources within the Chicago Public Schools and by offering class credit, she's really taking advantage of her position in her office and using the mayoral resources. And this is a no-no. This is a huge no-no. It's not supposed to happen, right? So for people who didn't understand a lot of reasons that this is wrong.
Yep, absolutely. So it's hard to watch. It's hard to watch. I'm tired of watching the political incompetency. Like even if you're not on my side, right? And I look at you as a politician, it's like, man, I wish you would fight for the issues that I cared about. I am someone who appreciates political competency, where I can look at you and say, man, I can't stand you, but I gotta admit, you're a damn good politician. Like Ron DeSantis, right? I can't stand Ron DeSantis. I think just about everything he stands for is terrible. And I think the way he treats people, especially minorities and migrants, and the way he speaks about them, absolutely awful. But I can look at the way he conducts himself as a politician and say, damn, you've really maneuvered yourself into a position where if you stood in front of the podium and said, I'm going to be the next president of the United States, people would take you seriously. They wouldn't laugh you out of the room. And your enemies would be fearful of what would happen if that were the case. Like, I can respect that. I don't like you. I'd fight like hell to stop you from being able to get to that position.
But I respect. Have to fight.
But we would have to fight. Yeah. We would have to fight. I respect competency. Where is the competency and what we've had for the last 4 years? How is it improving the city? How is it helping her allies and the people who got her into that position? Where is the political competency that demonstrates someone who understands power, how to hold on to power, and how to use that power for the betterment of the people who got you into office? I don't see it.
And I don't think enough people are going to see it. So I don't personally think she's going to make it to the runoff. And I think it's going to continue to go downhill for her. And, from what like I said, from the very beginning, she seemed to align herself opposite of anybody in the room. Now, I'm sure she's tried to align herself with the big money in this city. Right. But I'm not sure that the big money in this city is going to see her as any more of an ally other than any of these other folks. So
big money likes competency. You have to be competent enough to get the things that they want done. So you can't align yourself with big money if you can't get nothing done.
Yeah, I don't see them particularly standing in her in the way of her getting voted out of there. And I think it's going to happen with the quickness. I think in February, I don't think she's going to make the runoff. I do believe there's going to be a runoff. I don't think she's going to make it there. And like I said, she's opposite everybody. She hasn't made a friend anywhere. She hasn't made a friend with the teachers. She hasn't made a friend with the police. She's gone back and forth with, you can tell that the school board just kind of tries to do what she wants, try to avoid an argument, it seems like. It's just everywhere is an enemy to her. And at first, like I said, I had sympathy because I thought, it's a black woman. She's a lesbian. They're trying to push her around, and maybe she's trying. But at some point, this is not that. At some point, this is her. And I guess she's always been this. I just didn't see it at the very beginning. This is her. This is her. This is what you're going to get. And I just don't see that we want it. And I think her time is up. I think she's a one-term mayor, which is virtually unheard of in this city.
Not only that, but let me just be absolutely clear. All right. It hurts. It fucking hurts to be fighting against a black woman in power. Yeah, it's not a good feeling at all, especially in Chicago. We finally got a sister in here, and this is what we got. This is what we got. And I know it's only feeding into the despair people have around politics in general. A whole lot of black women before that election probably felt like my vote doesn't matter. My vote doesn't really count. There ain't really no point in voting. And they were probably surrounded by people who didn't bother to vote, period, because they're like, yo, vote don't matter anyway. What are you bothering to get up and go there for? But they got up, they went to vote, and they voted for Lightfoot because they're like, man, we're going to get a black woman in there, and she's going to stand for the community, and she's going to change some of the things that happen in the city, and things are going to work differently, and it's going to be for the betterment of all of us. And
they had to get up and out twice because it was a runoff between her and Periwinkle.
Exactly. Preckwinkle. Yeah. So it's like, I'm sure now you're looking 4 years later and you're like, my vote didn't really mean anything. I voted for the person who I felt like was the exact opposite of all the people who are usually in power in Chicago. And I ended up with the exact same result. How do I then get to that candidate who really stands for what I believe? I'm going through all of those same emotions. So for people at home who are feeling that way, man, I understand, because it really felt like it shouldn't have worked out like this, but this is the situation that we're in. There's no way I can support another Lightfoot run as mayor. There's no indication to me whatsoever that the next 4 years will be any different from the previous 4 years, and the previous 4 years were not beneficial to the black community. And let me be clear, I also understand there's a whole lot of people in the city that have been racist as hell towards her and aggressive as hell towards her and trying to pretend that she's somehow the worst mayor we've ever had. And oh my God, the leadership has just been terrible beyond anything we've ever experienced under Lightfoot. None of that is true. None of that is true. Like, I don't feel like she's been especially damaging for the black community. She just hasn't been beneficial for the black community. To me, when I look at this Lightfoot presidency, it's basically the same as what we got for Rahm Emanuel, just less competent. Rahm Emanuel was very politically competent, which allowed him to do crazy, terrible things to us without any consequences whatsoever. Whereas Lightfoot has been doing basically the exact same things, but she's not politically competent enough to hang on to her power while she's doing those things. That doesn't make her like especially worse than all these other people. It's not like she's technically worse for the black community. It's just same old good old boy nonsense.
Well, you know what is bad for the black community is a lot of people, without saying it, they look at it as, you know, we gave a black lesbian a chance.
Come on,
right
now.
And this is really the part that sucks, because I you know, recently the Chicago Bears hired a black president and CEO of the organization, which I thought was terrific.
Yep.
You know, I believe our defensive coordinator is black. I believe our quarterback is black. Right. And you know, and what was so unfortunate is as soon as the new president got hired by the Bears, I saw this really, really dumb comment of, okay, for all you people who thought the Bears were racist, you know, they now have a black president, a black defensive coordinator, and a black quarterback. So y'all can stop saying all that. This was a black person that said it.
Yep.
And I'm sitting there like, that's not how racism works. That's not how it works. The fact that you said that now has proven you are racist against your own damn people. Because what he said was exactly how racism works. And I'm fearful that that's how it's going to work here. You know, we gave a black woman a try. We gave a black lesbian a try. You know, so now if we see a black woman who happens to be a lesbian running again, we just can't have that. And, you know, I almost want to say, I'm scared that we're going to say, forget a black mayor in general now.
Yeah.
Because of this as well.
We need a return to normalcy and stability, y'all. Let's get a white man back in there. Come on now.
You know, and it really sucks that not just it's black people that also have that mindset. And it really sucks about us that we can't understand that we are so diverse. We have so many different thoughts, ideas, so many skills. You know, we're just as diverse as anybody else on the planet, even more, in fact, in a lot of cases. And we can't understand that not every one of us is good at everything. I don't understand how that part of racism works, where, oh, you know, so you can't be mayor. No, that person can't be mayor. Okay? Now, I mean, I just don't get how that part of that just clicks in people. So I think as far as hurting the black community, I think that part of it, you know, which is inadvertent on her part, I'm sure, and she's not to blame for that. She's not to blame for that. That's just our backwards way of thinking when it comes to race and politics and pretty much any profession where a black person gets put in charge of something and they don't live up to par to the position. All of us get blamed for that, as opposed to just the person themselves who didn't live up to the position.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. It's unfortunate, but I think I agree with you that we don't really need to deal with her much longer. So looking forward to February. Definitely looking forward to February.
Oh, yeah.
And that ends our show today. Hope all of you enjoyed this episode. We really appreciated bringing all the content to you. As always, my name is Samori. With me is Hudson, and we will see you all in the next episode. Take care.
Okay.